This is fourth video in the series about monitoring, and today we're going to talk about using metric collection agent. This is new project called Sonar to collect data from MySQL on Kubernetes. First of all, to see how it works, you can see example in front of me. So it's on GitHub, and you see there are a few samples. So I'm going to click here and go to MySQL. So as you see here, you have several steps to build a Docker container and then use Helm to install and create the pod and then basically run it. So I already done all the steps, and if you want to save time from compiling and building the image, you can certainly get it from Docker Hub and just run last step. So the container images are also available. So here is the example in the Visual Studio Code. And what we're doing here is collecting few metrics, and the adapter is simply reading data from MySQL database. So you can see the code, it's fairly simple. I think high school student can do this. And after that, this adapter for MySQL is simply added to Sonar Docker container. So you build your own as extended version. And as I said, if you want to save yourself some time and run the last step, you can certainly just do it with Helm and create your own configuration file or use the one in this example. So let's look how it actually works. So first of all, I already deployed Sidecar. So what you can see here is a Sonar 07 chart, and it's called Sonar MySQL right here. And then I created a few charts because the key problem that we're trying to address here is actually quite simple. How you, as a system reliability engineer, define metrics in the same way, but have flexibility to choose between different monitoring systems to send these metrics. So as you see here, I have Prometheus, Akumuli, and InfluxDB. They all have some data from MySQL. So, and what I'm going to show you is how to use Sonar Sidecar to send the data to these monitoring systems. So right now you see it's sending it to Akumuli, which is great time series database. It's on GitHub, has been around for quite a while. And then we also have Prometheus and InfluxDB. So let's look at the sidecar. First, you see this sidecar here. It's Unix Sidecar. And what it does is basically collect metrics. So you just specify in config file which metrics you want to be collected, and you can use it to define metrics for different sources, Windows or Linux SQL database, and extend it with MySQL adapter. So if we look at the secrets, you see that we do have a secret here. And the reason for a secret that if you are an operator, you really don't want to have credentials to the database where you're pulling data from or any kind of metric source. So what Sonar Sidecar does is creating a secret where you can define your own alias and password. And as system operator, you may not have access to the secret, but you may have access to config map. So let's look at config map here. So what you see here, we have few input adapters, one for Akumuli, one for SQL, and one for MySQL that I'm using now. So as you see here, the password is aliased. So the real password this sidecar gets from the secrets file. And we have very simple metric, which we run here. It's called N1, and the query is extremely simple query. So we run it, we create a metric per name, we tag subsystem name, and then we run this metric every 10 seconds. And you can define here your own metrics without any coding. So right now we have only one. So the output configured to Akumuli, and now we can go to with scope and see how it works. So you see here is my sidecar. It gets data from MySQL, writes to Akumuli, and then sidecar, when it's deployed, is automatically exposed to Prometheus. So you see Prometheus here. So far, so good. Now let's say I'm going to switch this to InfluxDB. So what we can do is simply go here to config map and change output from Akumuli to InfluxDB. So done. So if we read again, just to make sure that I didn't make any typos. Yes, it is InfluxDB. So, and you see the InfluxDB here. We have a service where it's exposed, and we send data through HTTP to Sonar database. Now we can see what happens with sidecar. It will take a little bit of time, maybe not too much. And from Prometheus standpoint, there are no metrics exposed to Prometheus, even though the endpoint is exposed. So in about a minute or two, we can do final step and switch to Prometheus. So first, let's see what happens with our sidecar again. And we can probably get logs and see what happens. So sometimes it takes a little bit for it to reload, but you see it's reloaded. And we got a new configuration here. We created InfluxDB output plugin. So everything is done and everything is restarted. So now you see sidecar is pointing to InfluxDB instead of Akumuli. And everything is working as expected. So if I want to see metrics, you see they're coming in right here. So, and it takes a second for you to switch metric system from one to another and continue. Now, if we want to do the same thing for Prometheus, I can go back and remove output completely, because default is Prometheus. So I just remove this one. Update again. So now there is no output, as you see here. And we'll wait a little bit until InfluxDB will disappear, and our scope will show us that all we have is MySQL, where we get data from. Now, if we look at CPU and memory resources, so you see here there is not really much going on, simply because there are not so many metrics, but the sidecar is very performance efficient. So now we only have Prometheus, and Sonar is exposing data to Prometheus only, so no Akumuli or InfluxDB. And as you see here, absolutely the same metric comes to Prometheus. It was in the DB metric log row log, so let's just make sure it's exactly the same. Yeah. So as you see, I changed metric systems in about 30 seconds. Again, you can try the sample, download the sidecar, deploy it on Kubernetes, and I hope you liked the video. Thank you.